In Warhammer 40k and much earlier, humanity has always been beset by countless enemies. The treacherous heretic, the vile Xenos, and the ungodly demons. The Imperium has held up for thousands of years, but that is all going to change, for an inevitable secret has been uncovered. The failure of the Golden Throne. The death of the Emperor will soon arrive, and with it, so too will the Astronomicon fall. These pillars of hope will send humanity to the depths of despair. As the Emperor draws his last breath, Magnus senses that the time for chaos to rise will be at hand, and the gods set their sights on Holy Terra, all being led by the forces of Abaddon the Despoiler. What is up, guys? This is the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and today I'm back to talk about Warhammer 40k. So about 2 years ago, I did a what-if scenario on the end of 40k and the beginning of Warhammer 50k, and you guys received it pretty well. So now that time has passed and we've seen the steps and stages of the next reiteration of Warhammer going into the 42nd millennium, let's go ahead and take a look at my what-if scenario and see what part can still happen and what is completely garbage. With the death of the Emperor, the Custodes were recalled back to Terra to defend the tomb of the Emperor under the Imperial Palace from the many warp gates that spawned after his death. As they protect the corpse of the Emperor, the Terran-born gene-stealer cults have been launching multiple hit-and-run assaults across the world. But that pales in comparison to the new threat coming their way, the many tendrils of the hive mind. So here we see something that has always been a case for the Adeptus Custodes. They will always remain pretty much on Terra and defend the Emperor. They've been doing this for thousands of years since the Emperor's interment on the Golden Throne, and just recently they've actually gone out into the galaxy to defend the Imperium and the Emperor from outside threats. So with the news that the Emperor's Golden Throne was failing, I still see that the Custodes would rescind that order to go out into the galaxy and pretty much just defend the Emperor's body. Now, with the fall of the Emperor, the Astronomicon going away, warp gates opening up on Terra, all this is going to be basically what the Custodes are busy doing. Now, let's not forget that each one is pretty much a one-man army, so I think that they could hold off Terra from whatever threats come their way. The gene-stealer cults, that's not really going to be a big threat. I mean, more so to the citizens of Terra, but at the same time, they got the Custodes defending the Imperial Palace. They have planetary defense forces as well as space marines stationed on Terra, so they should be doing okay there. Now, with the hive mind coming their way, one of the big things that we've seen that the Tyranids have is in 10th edition, they've got new Tyranid bioforms. They got the Norn's emissaries that are capable of taking out almost a squad of Adeptus Custodes. And this is unheard of in terms of power. So think of this as a Norn's emissary being able to take out almost an entire company of space marines. That's how powerful these things are. So if you have a tendril going into Terra, filled with these apex demon predators of the hive mind, then yeah, they definitely need to bump up their defenses, or else Terra will fall and be consumed along with all its biomass. So I think I'm still going on the right concepts when it comes to the Custodes, but let's go ahead and shift gear to the humans of the Imperium, the Astra Militarum. The Imperial Guard has been stretched far too wide and too thin. Countless casualties are at an all-time high, and morale is at an all-time low. Entire regiments have begun to desert their posts. The Guard have a saying, "Victory is measured in blood, the enemy's and your own." But now it seems that they have no more blood to shed for the Imperium that failed them. So this is a continuing trend that we see with the Astra Militarum. They're untold billions of trillions of millions of lives that basically get pushed into the battle zones of the galaxy. An individual guardsman life does not matter, and it's all about numbers when it comes to these regiments. So after the death of the Emperor, it's like, who are they fighting for? And time again, we see that in order to kind of discipline the guard, the commissars would execute one of their own in order to boost morale. But when there's no hope left, they're just going to go ahead and desert or cause mutiny, and the many forces of the Astra Militarum, the many regiments, will probably just break off into their own groups, or even desert and go off into Tau-controlled space, where they'll become Guevesa, or even worse, find somebody else to praise. And there's nobody else that is willing to give praise than that of the Chaos Gods. So we're definitely going to see more Traitor Guard regiments, all for Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh, and that's going to hurt the Imperium vastly. Next up, we have the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle. With their Emperor-given miracles taken from them after the death of the Emperor, the Sisters of Battle have begun to question their faith. Many orders have renounced their devotion to their god, and have turned their prayers towards the ruinous powers of chaos. The few who still believe began a crusade back towards Terra. All the while, Saint Celestine is nowhere to be found. So after I made this little excerpt for the future of the Sisters, we got a huge player that was introduced for their ranks, and that is Morvenn Val. She is also a High Lord of Terra, so she has a lot of pull within the Imperium. I don't think that the death of the Emperor will break them or make them as fractured as I once thought, because Morvenn Val will kind of use this to usher back the Sisters to create a more powerful force because the Emperor is gone. So now they'll see the Emperor as a martyr. Thus, we have thousands, or not thousands, but we have a pretty good amount of martyrs within the Sisters. So I think that's going to be a new push, a new ray of hope to kind of make them fight harder for the Imperium now that the Emperor is gone. So it's not going to look as bleak as the Imperial Guard for them, especially considering that even if Saint Celestine has disappeared for some reason or another, they do have Morvenn Val to kind of fall back and see as that means of leadership and morale boost. The Inquisition. News of the Emperor's death spread like wildfire, and the High Lords began to take action. Many fortified their positions to keep their powers by allying with Xenos, while others found it easier to become a pawn of chaos. Luckily, the many eyes and ears of the Inquisition took notice. Various assassins were dispatched to quell rebellions or would-be heretics, but one High Lord managed to rally a sector of space for his own, via the might of the Minotaur's chapter. So I think the Inquisition would definitely have failsafes in place in case something like this ever happened. I mean, they saw what kind of dire straits the Imperium was in after Coach Van Dyer took control. So I know they'll have assassins, they'll have agents kind of at the ready to make sure that with the death of the Emperor, another tyrant doesn't go ahead and proclaim that he's the Emperor reincarnated or something like that. So I think the Inquisition will definitely be able to kind of pull together the broken pieces of the Imperium and forge it into a new future, probably one better than where they're at now. However, you do have varying sects of the Inquisition that are at odds with one another, so there's always going to be infighting there. We have rumors that perhaps there will be an Agents of the Imperium / Inquisition Codex coming out for 10th edition, so hopefully we'll see new lore spring up from there. But for now, I think the Inquisition is in a good position to kind of help the Imperium usher in this new age. The Ecclesiarchy. The Adeptus Ministrorum held strong during their darkest time. For many priests, they heard the voice of their god Emperor after his death. Whether this really was the Emperor or some other force remains to be a mystery, but the Imperial Creed held on. Shrine worlds became beacons of hope for untold trillions of people, many of them being former guardsmen. Entire worlds would embark on pilgrimages in hopes of salvation. Most would never reach their destination, but Terra was always there, ushering in their hope and prayers. So the Imperial Creed is basically what broke the Imperium, but also kind of united it. The Emperor was always against religion, saying that logic was the better course for humanity than belief. And after the Emperor's interment on the Golden Throne and the reveal of chaos being an actual thing, humanity kind of started getting these miracles, these psychic powers, these abilities, and that's where the Emperor became the God Emperor. And after his death, the ecclesiarchy can use that as a means to kind of control humanity better. So whether it's a means of hope or a means for corrupt priests to kind of gain power, we're going to see a lot of shrine worlds pop up and kind of try to get a piece of the pie of the broken Imperium to make themselves more profitable, corrupt planetary governors, stuff like that. So it's going to be more of the same that we see in the Imperium nowadays, just in a grander scale. The Sisters of Silence. Upon the death of the Emperor, the Sisters were ordered to be stationed on various locations on Terra to create a matrix of anti-warp energy. At any given time, 6 untouchables are to stand vigil, protecting the tomb of the Emperor. So just like before, the Sisters of Silence are used as a bodyguard for the Emperor's corpse will definitely be a key piece for Chaos to kind of get their hands on and use almost as a conduit of their power, almost like a mockery of what the Emperor used to be. So by having the Sisters of Silence to basically create a dome of anti-chaos, anti-psychicness around the Emperor, they could enshrine his body and protect him better that way. So I think that's what they'll be doing, kind of helping the Adeptus Custodes while on Terra and protecting the body of the Emperor. And finally, I know everybody's been waiting for this, the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines. The final guardians of mankind, the Space Marines, they are the saviors of last resort, humanity's angels of death. They must keep their Emperor-given vow, the defense of humanity, and they will. Their time was always occupied fighting against the creeping Tyranid threat, the newly spawned Black Orcs from the Octaria sector, and the Silent King's United Necron Alliance. Under the leadership of Rabut Gilliman and Lionel Johnson, who awoke after Dante of the Blood Angels slew Abaddon the Despoiler after succumbing to the Black Rage. With 2 Primarchs leading the last hope of humanity, the Imperium held for 665 days. After the death of the Emperor, on the 666th, the Space Marines finally knew fear. So here we're seeing that basically they knew the Emperor was dying, and that's when Chaos decided to attack. Not just Chaos, but all the forces of the galaxy knew that this was the time to usurp the Imperium's control on the galaxy. So basically it was an all-out intergalactic war. The Silent King united the Necrons, the Tyranid hive mind sent all the tendrils towards Terra, and Chaos began, I guess what would be the next Black Crusade, towards Terra. During this fighting, the Lion had woken up, which in recent times we know that he did, and Abaddon's crusade led to Baal first. On Baal, Dante of the Blood Angels succumbed to the Black Rage, but this power-up was enough to strike down Abaddon and kind of leave the Chaos forces without a main head. So with the death of Abaddon, it's not like Chaos is without order. They do have the Demon Primarchs to continue their battle against the Imperium, but as we've seen in the recent 40k lore, there's a new player to this, the demigod of technology and innovation Vashtor. So Vashtor and Abaddon have been working together to collect these fragments of a key that will unlock a very powerful weapon. This didn't happen when I was making the lore, so this is something that I definitely have to put into account for any new what-if scenarios, because now we have demigods into the mix. It's no longer just the chaos gods. We have demigods, there might be more coming out. Maybe Vashtor will ascend to godhood, and how is that going to change things? We do know more information with the release of the End in the Death volumes 1, 2, and 3, that the Emperor could become the Dark King. So maybe with the death of the Corpse Emperor, the Dark King will ascend and there will be 5 Chaos Gods. There's just so many different kind of storylines that are driven with that. What's going to happen with Salmus, the new usher of the Dark King? Is he going to be pro-chaos, anti-chaos? Will he help humanity, plunge humanity further into darkness? There's a lot that we don't know, and I think with this going forward, I should take another crack at kind of explaining how the Dark King can influence Warhammer 50k. But before that, let's go ahead and talk about the final battle on Terra that I talked about 2 years ago and see if maybe that could come to fruition. The beginning of the end. The unified Chaos army cut a swath through any and everything in their way towards Terra. Entire armies that waged war against him were torn to shreds, and many joined in their ranks, pledging themselves to the Chaos gods. They were one step away from reaching the Imperial Palace, but they had to get through the sentient planet of Mars. Guilliman and his forces ready to back up call, but a Vox was sent out to tell them to stay back. Mars began to quake, and the blood-red sands split open. From deep within the world's core, a massive arm burst forth. A roar heard across the galaxy signaled the birth of an uncharted Catan. The Void Dragon arose. As the ancient star god battled against the demonic horde, more and more battle barges began to arrive, both traitor and loyalist. The war across Mars quickly became too destructive, as many Titan-class war machines began to go apocalyptic. Guilliman notices that both the Forge and the Void Dragon are struggling, and he orders for all Imperial forces to push forward. Were it not that chaos is the weakness of the Catan, then perhaps they could have repelled the demonic horde. But the Void Dragon met his end at the hands of a demon Primarch. The Aurelian, Lorgar, was buffed by the magic of Magnus the Red, and he managed to behead the Catan with Dracnian. The explosive backlash of a god's death sent a chain reaction of blasts across Mars, and the planet could hold on no longer. Any Psyker still able attempted to shield their forces from the planet-sized explosion, but it was for naught. Both armies suffered an excruciatingly high amount of casualties. More so perished in the ensuing black hole created in Mars's wake, until a heavily damaged Magnus managed to expel it. Unfortunately for Chaos, Lorgar and Perturabo perished in the blast. Their status as demon princes meant that they'll soon emerge from the bowels of warp once again. By the Emperor's grace, both Lionel Johnson and Roboute Guilliman survived. The order was sent to regroup on Terra and prepare for what could be their last battle. But before they could assemble, Constantine Valdor voxed in, stating that the traitor Primarchs had teleported before the gates of the Imperial Palace, and the Custodes and Sisters of Silence are in combat against them. By the time the Lion and Guilliman teleported to join the battle, most of the Custodes and Sisters had perished. Only Mortarion seemed to have been wounded, for the side of Chaos. Lionel Johnson unsheathed the Lion Sword, and Guilliman ignited the Emperor's Sword. The final battle had truly begun. At this point in time, the Supreme Grand Master of the 666 Space Marine chapter telepathically spoke to Valdor. With no other option left, the two agreed that it was time to enact the Terminus Decree, and with a single coordinated motion, everything changed. So at this point, the Terminus Decree was unknowns to us as readers. We always knew it was like a doomsday device, a last-ditch effort to save humanity, but we didn't know. However, with the end and the death being revealed, we now know that the Terminus Decree is essentially a virus that destroys all Space Marines, loyalist and traitor alike. So I don't think the Terminus Decree will be used here, because obviously GW does not want to rid themselves of their money-making assets, is the most popular things, the Space Marines. So the Terminus Decree won't be used here, but let's go ahead and continue the final portion of this battle. The dawn of a new era. The galaxy erupts in golden light as the warp births forth a divine god of chaos, the fifth chaos god, the Starfather. The Emperor of Mankind had been reborn through apotheosis at the great cost of human life. Untold humans had their souls ripped from their bodies and into the God Emperor's army of the light. Entire sectors of space lost all of their human population. The Imperium had lost most of its inhabitants, but hope had been restored. A new faction was created to illuminate the shadows of chaos and bring order to the warp. The Starfather and his reborn warriors had arrived. Standing between the demonic Primarchs and the Loyalist were three warriors, Saint Celestine, Ferrus Manus, and Sanguinius. The Emperor's angels had arrived. Angron and Fulgrim charged forward, but were pinned down by a hail of burning bolter rounds. All around them, the Legion of the Damned materialized. The powers of chaos ordered their forces to retreat. This was a major unknown in the Changer of Ways' plans. Reluctantly, the spell was cast, and in their retreat, a new age was ushered in. Warhammer 50k. So at this point, I don't think any of this is going to happen. It doesn't make sense for the Emperor to be birthed anew and still be on the side of anti-chaos. If anything, it would be the Dark God, like we've talked about before. And I don't think it would be kind of a new faction for the Imperium. If anything, we could see the Legion of the Damned being fleshed out. The Emperor's angels that I talked about here, Saint Celestine and the fallen Primarchs, Ferrus, Manus, and Sanguinius. It's best that they stay dead because their deaths and their actions means more. If you take away the kind of finality of death, because then if they can get resurrected, then what's the point of death at all? It kind of takes away the stakes from the game, or at least the storyline of 40k. But that's all I have from 2 years for the side of the Imperium. Now, let me know your thoughts down below. What'd you think about this? But for the next video, we'll look into the Xeno side of things and what were they doing at the end of 40k and what will they be doing in this new 50k era. So let me know your thoughts down below. Like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. This has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and I'll catch you then. Peace.